3, 2. Alright, good morning everyone. This is my IB theater presentation on Rakugo. Rakugo finds itself in a Japanese origin. It is up there with the likes of Kabuki, No, Bunraku as one of the traditional forms of theater in Japan, and also one of their representative art forms. It was named by UNESCO actually a few years ago as as a cultural heritage. The actual meaning of the word Rakugo can be translated into English as falling word, which is in reference to the jokes that are told in it. Rakugo is one of the more comedic forms of theater, and that little falling word is the little climax of the joke, that little punchline that subverts everything else that has been done. Storytelling elements can be traced back to the 12th century from Buddhist monks. So at the time, Buddhist monks would try to get across stories of man's folly, trying to teach peasants. However, it didn't go so well if they tried to do it normally, just by talking to them. This is because, of course, the peasants were uneducated, they couldn't understand much, so out of necessity, Buddhist monks would shorten these stories, make them more comedic, and have the morals that they wanted to get across come somewhere at the end, making it simpler for the peasants to understand, and this would become the basic form of Rakugo. Throughout its history, it would still be performed on the streets. It would be mainly focused on these Buddhist stories trying to get across these points. However, by the 12th century, we see, not the 12th century, by the Edo period of Japan, we see the rise of the merchant class, middle class that has more disposable income, more time on their hands to do what they want, and thus came the emergence of entertainment and theaters all across Japan. These theaters would include, as I previously mentioned, Kabuki, No, and more importantly, Rakugo. The first yosei, which are the traditional Rakugo theaters, would be opened by Sanshote Karaku, and they're not too different from what Western theaters. If you could imagine just an elevated platform on which the Rakugoku, or the performer, could kneel upon so that the audience could very clearly see them and very clearly see their facial expressions. Stories are very, very important to Rakugo, and they have to follow a very particular structure. It's split up into 3 different things: the Makura, the Hondai, and the Ochi. The Makura is a prologue. It is the Rakugoku coming to the audience and opening with some casual conversation, something very topical, being able to draw in the audience, maybe give hints as to what their story will later be. Then there's the Hondai, which is the main story. To transition from the Makura into the Hondai, there is the use of an onomatopoeia, e, in the traditional Japanese, or in English, it could just be a simple It's a way to show the audience, I'm now transitioning into the real story of what's going on. The Hondai is where you get your characters. It's where you set up all of the information that will later be subverted for Ochi. The Ochi is your punchline, it's your falling word to say. It's where the comedy really comes from. An Ochi usually has a very strange twang to it, because it's, as I said, a joke. It doesn't have to make sense, it just has to make you laugh. Some of the conventions of Rakugo. This right here is the yosei I was talking about earlier. As you see, it's just a very simple traditional stage. Rakugoku is elevated for maximum viewing. You would also note that there is no real set to Rakugo, because Rakugo is an oral storytelling tradition. So set is minimal, if not non-existent. The most you could even consider set would be the small pillow on which the Rakugoku would kneel upon for comfort. As I said before, it's the art of verbal storytelling. So it's one person up there conveying the story, conveying the jokes. They're usually dressed very simply in just a kimono. And there's also something very unique to Rakugo. From some of the other Japanese traditions, as to where the Rakugo is armed only with a hand towel and a fan. These two things are later used to convey anything else that Rakugo would need, and which we'll get to a little later. To make it a little easier to understand, Rakugo could be compared to stand-up comedy in a way, because of the way that it's an oral performer getting out there and trying to draw you in initially, and then getting you to hear the jokes, hear the stories, trying to make you laugh. Now we're getting back to the hand towel and the fan. The hand towel and the fan are Rakugo's only tools. And with these two things, they are allowed to portray anything they might want. The fan can be used, obviously, as just a simple fan. It can be used to denote a character, used in such a way showing maybe a geisha or a more feminine character. But it can also be used in a more conventional way. Rakugo and Rakugo loves to focus on jabs at samurai, because the samurai were a ruling class, so it was very easy to make fun of them. As such, when you're describing a samurai, you would need their sword, in which case the fan would be held in a more firm grip, usually at the base. The movements would become much slower. There would seem to be more of a weight behind it, as if using a real sword. In other ways, it can also be used as an eating tool. Chopsticks, for instance. The hand towel is another less used, but still very valuable tool. When rolled in such a fashion, like this, it can be considered a scroll. Rolled into more of a box-like, it can be considered a bento box. And when you put these two together, that's where some of the real magic happens. Opening the scroll and holding the fan more as a pen can simulate calligraphy. Using the scroll as chopsticks, using the fan as chopsticks, and using the hand towel as bento box simulates delicious noodle lunch. Absolutely delicious. That one was a lot bigger. Burned my throat a little bit. From these more exaggerated features, you can see the second element of Rakugo, which is the way in which they portray characters. As a lone storyteller, there needs to be a very clear distinction between which characters you're playing. However, you can't just change your pitch to simulate, let's say, a female character or a childish character or a child character. There needs to be something else. You would usually see characters such as brutish samurai, flirtatious geisha, humble farmers, very clear adjectives for them to sort of show you how to actually portray them. You would highlight differences in speech patterns and mannerisms rather than just changes in pitches. So, for instance, if we're to be talking about the geisha, the words would begin to flow better than what the regular Rakugo would speak. There might be that higher pitch in tone, but there will also be a certain flirtatious nature to the way in which words would be said. The face would also have that exaggeration of keeping it very still, letting just the mouth move a little bit more, the eyes focused. Now, if you were doing the farmer, then you would go into dialects. You would start dropping, making everything sound very unprofessional, what it should be. So, if we're doing it in a more American way, then you would begin that little southern accent. You'd be dropping little vowels and consonants here and there. You'd be getting a little maybe faster. You wouldn't speak as very fluidly. Your diction would be all off because you're portraying usually a less educated character in that way. And one of my favorites that I didn't have up here is the way in which they portray monsters or yokai. Because monsters are dumb, but they believe they're smarter than humans, and they portray that in speaking in a high and mighty tone and speaking in a very, very bad puns. I don't have any, for example, but for an oni or a troll, usually they would be scrunching up of the face, the liver, or they'd be like, the voice would be a little lower, and then you would talk like you, you know, high and mighty, and when, what's the word? As you'll see. And now, if you'll bear with me, I'd like to do a very quick Rakugo performance for you all. A quick demonstration. How are you all today? I can see everyone's a little tired, a little stressed. It is around the end of exams. And, you know, the thing I hate about studying for exams is that I never know the answers to the questions. And more importantly, I don't know the questions to ask. And that reminds me of a certain tale that I saw the other day. As I was walking down the street, I saw a brutish policeman who was ready to stir up some trouble. He had already kicked around some hooligans, and he had come across an old man. He did not know this old man, nor did he like this old man. So he went over to harass him. Now the old man, minding his own business, and he was eating rice. His feeble body could barely lift the chopsticks he was using or hold up his little box. He was eating, he was content, until this police officer showed up. Now the police officer doesn't believe he has money. So the police officer goes and asks him, "What are you doing?" Now he couldn't ask the old man, "Do you have any money?" because that would be disrespectful. Yes, the policeman is of a higher power, but the old man is much older than him, so he must show him some respect. To which the old man replies, "Eating rice." The police officer doesn't like that. The police officer wants to know what he wants to know. So then he asks him, "And where did you get that rice?" "From the steamer." Again, he's not answering the question the police officer wants him to answer. So the police officer continues, "And where did you get this rice from the steamer?" "It was delivered." The police officer is not confused. "It was delivered to you?" "No, it was delivered to the rice shop." "The rice shop? Well then how did you pay for it?" "I didn't." And the police officer, knowing not what to do, walked away. For not being able to tell the exact question he wanted, and not get the answers he wanted, the end. Thank you. And now just a quick thing on what I actually did there. You would see different conventions. So chopsticks used as baton for the police officer. They were used as, the fan was used as a baton for the police officer, chopsticks for the old man. The little hand towel was used as the bento box. And there's also the changes in the way it was talking. There would be a lot more roughness, a lot more quickness to the voice of the police officer because of, you know, an arrogance. These police officers are positions of authority, so they would usually be portrayed as that arrogance or being very cruel. Whereas the old man is wise. Gentler tone, softer way of speaking. He does not need to raise his voice because he is always heard. And then there's also a dynamic and how he would move. The police officer was very aggressive, staying larger and also looking down upon the old man, whereas the old man, very more relaxed in his body, looking higher because he is still at a disadvantage. And this is one of the reasons I really like Rakugo.